Thames from London. In 30 minutes, our local bulletin. First, the national news at the studios of ITN, tonight with Sandy Gall and Pamela Armstrong. It's 10 o'clock.
Scott Lithgow, the last-minute rescue by two bidders. The secret letter from the Mays' dead deputy governor. A British ship is hit by a missile in the Gulf. How the Swiss police outwitted a hijacker. A report says nearly half Britain's children watch video nasties. Good evening. Two rival companies have joined forces to take over the state-owned Scott Lithgow yard at Greenock, but they say they'll only be able to save about half of the 3,000 jobs. Trafalgar House and the Anglo-French group Howard Doris were the only companies left in the bidding for the yard. They hope to do a deal with British shipbuilders by the end of next week, but a critical factor is whether or not Britoil will agree to renegotiate its cancelled order for an £86 million oil rig.
Britoil's decision to cancel its £86 million rig, 2 years late and only 30% complete, sparked off the race to sell Scott Lithgow. British shipbuilders, under tight government cash limits, said the choice was to privatise or close. Trafalgar House, the construction and shipping giant, was first in the running. It wanted work for its Teesside fabrication yards, offered around 10 million for Scott Lithgow and pledged to spend another 20. But renegotiating the Britoil contract was an essential part of the deal, and Britoil was unhappy with previous work done by Trafalgar House. Howard Doris, experienced rig makers in the north of Scotland, had the deep-sea technology but was said to lack Trafalgar House's financial resources. The marriage of the rivals, say ministers, is the best solution.
We've now got, I believe, the financial backing in this new organisation. We've certainly got the skill, a proven track record of companies already offshore, and what I hope we will get is also the cooperation of the workforce as well. Because what everyone's got to realise is the whole of this offshore industry is incredibly competitive. And it's not just a matter of being competitive in price. What matters is very high quality of work and also punctuality of being able to deliver on time.
The shipyard workers, who at one stage considered occupying the yard to fight job losses, face a rundown from 3,000 to 1,500 jobs. Tonight, their leaders say it's wrong to claim that the provisional agreement is preserving jobs in the area.
To suggest that this is a solution that comes in to save jobs is a wee bit of nonsense. This is companies recognising the potential that is there in the yard and the facility, recognising the potential and the high skills of the workforce. And it's a sad indictment that British shipbuilders and the government could not have maintained that for the country.
But Trafalgar House executives feel the yard has good prospects in private hands.
We are buying this business, or hope to buy this business, on a long-term basis. We have a great belief in the requirement for large floating structures and semi-submersible drilling ships for the future in order to explore the deep water around the UK for further oil.
The months ahead will decide whether that optimism is justified, whether more orders can be drummed up and extra jobs saved, and whether the £100 million bill the government has to pick up for redundancies and compensation for delays will prove to be money well spent.
The deputy governor of the Mays prison, who was killed by the IRA yesterday, left a secret letter which is thought to be critical of the prison regime. Mr. William McConnell wrote the letter with instructions that it be made public after his death. It will be read at his funeral tomorrow. Prison officers at the Mays will halt visits and parcel deliveries at the jail until after the funeral.
Mr. McConnell wrote the letter on the 3rd of February, the day after he gave ITN this interview. He decided to break the traditional silence of prison governors to speak out against the Hennessy report on the breakout at the Mays prison. He volunteered to give the interview. Although his face was in shadow, he already knew that his life was in danger. The position he held at the Mays marked him out as a terrorist target. In the letter, he says he had to come to terms with that fact through his Christian faith. He left explicit instructions that the letter was not to be opened until his death, because it contained comments about the Mays escape and the prison regime there that he couldn't voice as a serving member of the prison service. Mr. McConnell met his brutal end yesterday, cut down by an IRA gang outside his home in front of his wife and 3-year-old daughter. This note accompanied the letter, written on government-issue paper, placed in the hands of a trusted friend to be opened only by the Reverend Magahi, a cousin of Mr. McConnell's. It will be read out by him at the funeral service tomorrow. David Chater, News at 10 in Belfast.
A British ship has been hit by a missile in the Gulf and extensively damaged. The 19,000-ton bulk carrier Charming, registered in Jersey, was sailing in convoy in the Gulf's war zone when it was hit by a heat-seeking missile. The 14 crew on board took to the lifeboats and left the ship ablaze, but no one was seriously hurt. International Red Cross doctors say Iranian wounded they examined in a Tehran hospital show signs of having been exposed to chemical weapons. Iran accuses Iraq of using mustard gas against its forces in their desert war. The Red Cross doctors say 2 of the 160 Iranians they saw died while they were visiting the hospital.
At Geneva Airport, Swiss police disguised as airport caterers overpowered a man who hijacked an Air France Boeing 737. The hijacker seized the plane with 68 passengers and crew on an early morning flight from Frankfurt to Paris. He claimed he had a backpack full of explosives. After 4 hours on the ground in Geneva, he asked for food. The 2 policemen in red overalls found the hijacker in the cockpit, apparently armed only with a knife. After a brief struggle, they bundled him out onto the tarmac and overpowered him. The hijacker turned out to be an Algerian living in Germany. It's not known if he belonged to any terrorist organization. His only demand was to be flown to Libya. Leaders of all the warring factions in Lebanon have agreed to attend reconciliation talks in Switzerland next week. In Damascus, President Assad has announced that a new Syrian cabinet will be named in the next few days to replace the 4-year-old administration which resigned yesterday. In Israel, 3 people were killed when a bomb exploded on the bus in a port of Ashdod. 10 other people were injured. The bus was crowded with shoppers returning from market when the bomb went off. A Palestinian extremist group said they carried out the attack.
Here, miners at 2 Yorkshire pits have voted in favour of an all-out strike next week over pit closures. The vote came on the eve of the Miners' Union executive meeting, which will discuss further action against the pit closure programme. A quarter of Yorkshire's 56,000 miners are already on strike in a series of disputes. They'll all be out next week, along with 14,000 in Scotland. Mr. Ray Chadburn, the moderate leader of the Nottinghamshire miners, says his men won't strike without a secret ballot, but he said that flying pickets from Yorkshire could try to halt work in the Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire coalfields. The National Coal Board says Yorkshire miners have lost £21 million in the 19-week overtime ban. That's about £400 a man. But the Yorkshire miners say they're determined to fight the closure of 2 pits in their area, Bull Cliff Wood and Corton Wood.
In advance of tomorrow's miners' executive meeting, Corton Wood miners reaffirmed their desire for a full national strike against pit closures. Their pit is to be closed from April the 6th because the coal boards say its supplies are running low and that it's losing money. 113,000 tonnes of coking coal lies here unsold. The market for this high-quality fuel, say the coal board, has disappeared with the demise of the steel industry. The miners, though, say otherwise.
If they wanted to sell this coal, which they tell us is the finest quality coal in this land of ours, and they tell us that they can't sell it, rubbish. They don't want to sell it.
So the village of Brampton loses 850 jobs. The NCB say that over 600 of these will be transferred elsewhere in South Yorkshire. But 51-year-old Terry Harper joins 200 or so who'll be offered redundancy.
I'm virtually just thrown on the scrap heap. And here is Maggie setting people on, working for the coal board at 72-year-old.
But the protest is unlikely to sway Mr. McGregor. Uneconomic pits don't make money, he says. Clearly, these men and the coal board are poles apart. Michael Macmillan, News at 10, Yorkshire.
Trade union leaders today carried out their threat to boycott the National Economic Development Council as a protest against the government ban on unions at GCHQ. The meeting went on without them, discussing the cotton industry and higher education. The Chancellor, Mr. Nigel Lawson, said as he went in that he thought it would be a good meeting. Afterwards, Michael Green asked the Employment Secretary, Mr. Tom King, whether the boycott had made any difference.
I regretted the absence, and I very much hope that the TUC will be able to join in again soon.
If they stay away for long, will it be possible to continue this forum? Will there be any point in it, really?
I very much hope that they will return because I think everybody recognises it's a worthwhile forum in which a lot of people can contribute. Liverpool City Council now looks unlikely to pass its so-called bankruptcy budget after 6 Labour councillors said they wouldn't support it. The left-wing council had planned a budget that would have put the city £30 million into debt in direct confrontation with the government. But today the 6 rebels signed a document saying they couldn't back a move they considered illegal. The Labour majority on the council is just 3.
In the United States, Senator Gary Hart has had his 3rd win in a row over Mr. Walter Mondale in the contest for the Democratic nomination for president. He's beginning to look unstoppable, though he says he's still underdog. Senator Hart's latest win was in the primary election in Vermont in New England, where he'd already taken New Hampshire and Maine. Mr. Mondale, vice president under President Carter, has only taken Iowa in the first caucus, or party activists' vote. Senator Hart is favourite to win in Wyoming caucus on Saturday. Next Tuesday, Super Tuesday they're calling it, there are votes in 9 states, including Massachusetts and the key southern states of Alabama, Georgia and Florida. Here's an American report.
Gary Hart celebrated his victory in Vermont tonight by attending the Strawberry Festival in Lakeland, Florida. Along with hundreds of potential voters, Hart admired the queen of the Strawberry Festival and swallowed mounds of strawberries and cream. But delicious as they were, those strawberries couldn't have tasted any sweeter to Hart than his latest New England victory over Walter Mondale.
Pleased for our supporters in Vermont, and I appreciate all their work they did. It's going to be tough down here, but we're just going to do our best.
Hart would not, however, claim the role of front-runner in the Democratic primary.
Vice President Mondale's been the front-runner for a year and a half, so I'm just still the underdog.
But later at the Lakeland airport, he did say that Vermont shows his campaign can attract the votes necessary to beat Ronald Reagan.
I believe the results in Vermont show that this campaign does have a chance to reach out beyond the Democratic Party, to expand the frontiers of our party and expand the electoral base of our party.
After that, it was off to Birmingham for a day of campaigning in Alabama, one of 3 southern states voting next Tuesday.
We did not contest it in any meaningful sense. There was quite a hard effort there, but I'm not trying to explain it. I was defeated, and defeated rather handsomely. But the debate is just beginning now.
A parliamentary inquiry claimed today that 45% of Britain's children watch sex or horror videos and said it found the figures alarming. A report in part 2. Also, Prince Charles gives the young a talking to, and the bald patch that daisies got licked in a couple of minutes.
There's an idea that's older than the written word, the picture.
I'll need 2,000 copies.
But it's taken someone as advanced as Agfa to see its full potential. The larger Agfa copiers have a liquid crystal display to show in pictures which of the many advanced features you've chosen, including the 2,000 sheet tray. Agfa copiers. What could be simpler? Ring 01200 0200.
A boating holiday is full of surprises. Who knows who'll pop in to drag you out for a quick bite? And when you least expect it, you bump into the most unusual people.
But who? Humongous. Now available on Embassy Video.
Roger, 124 million US dollars. You are 30 miles from touchdown. Good evening, 38 million Australian dollars. Continue your descent to Heathrow. Roger, 102 million Hong Kong dollars. Reduce speed to 170 knots. 223 million Deutschmarks. Repeat, 223 million Deutschmarks. Cleared to Heathrow. Heathrow to 7,440 million yen. You are cleared to land.
British Airways is now contributing £500 million a year to Britain's balance of payments. From out of the skies. British Airways, the world's favourite airline.
Applying for a loan from Lloyds Bank is more straightforward than you ever dreamt. All you do is fill in a simple form. Name and address and telephone, date of your birth, and married or single, and number of children. You can use the loan for all sorts of things. Or occupation. Now, who do you bank with? Now, if it's not Lloyds, we're not annoyed. Purpose of loan, amount you want. Often you won't even need to see a bank manager, unless you'd like to. And very soon, you could have your dream living room. To sign on the old dotted line and last, the date. At Lloyds, you'll find personal loans, a matter of form.
The Parliamentary Working Party report today says nearly half the children in England and Wales have seen video nasties, that is, videotapes showing sadistic sex or violence. Preliminary findings published last year were criticised for being badly researched, but the authors say their figures are right and the pictures even worse than they thought. More than 4,000 children and 2,000 parents were questioned. The report says 45% of 7 to 16-year-olds have seen one or more video nasties. 33%, 1 in 3, of 7-year-olds have seen at least one. In many cases, it was at friends' houses without their parents' knowledge.
If the research about the number of children who watch these films is correct, then the findings show a startling trend. The north and northwest regions are black spots. More than a quarter of the children living there have seen one or more of the particularly unpleasant video nasties. The report relates this to social factors such as unemployment, but the attitude of parents is also important.
Where parents are very lenient, again that's an evaluative word, but where parents allow their children to watch anything, those children have seen many times more video nasties than the parents who are very protective in their attitudes.
But there is concern that the findings may be exaggerated. The first part of this report was published last November. Then, the way the data was collected was seriously criticised by leading academics and churchmen. This time the researchers say they're right.
These figures are 100% accurate. We went through the data, and it's a very large sample, very much larger than samples, for example, that national opinion polls are based on. We went through our data time and time again, at least 4 or 5 times. We went right through the whole lot. We submitted any doubtful questionnaires to a panel of experienced teachers who looked at handwriting, and we carried out many more honesty checks through sending our researchers and through the way in which the whole survey was constructed. We can guarantee these figures are correct.
Graham Bright has a private member's bill before Parliament. He wants more protection for children, but is wary of the report.
I still think it is open for question, but I underline the fact that the report itself certainly highlights that there is a very serious problem, and I would consider it too much if we had 10% of young children seeing these video nasties, but 45% I think does tend to go too far, and certainly the experience that I have doesn't show that it is quite as high as that.
The data is now being analysed by a group of psychiatrists to see what effect these films might have. But what do the children themselves think?
It's stupid, really, the way people moan. It's not that scary.
What about stuff like The Living Dead and zombie flesh eaters and all that stuff?
Yeah, they're stupid. They're not realistic, are they? My mum don't really let me, but I watch them when she's not in.
I watch horror films, comedies, and science fiction films.
Which do you prefer?
Me, I prefer horror films.
Why's that?
Because they're more scarier, more threatening, and more blood.
Britain's third largest police force is drawing up a plan to fight the growing number of violent attacks on old people. Representatives from all sections of the community in West Yorkshire are being called on to support the campaign. In South London, Prince Charles condemned attacks on the elderly when he visited a probation centre today. He met some of the young people at the centre and talked to officials about their work. Later, he explained to radio reporters why he believed the elderly were becoming the victims of young attackers.
Unemployment is a particular cause, perhaps. The sort of circumstances you live in deprived areas of the country, in inner city areas, it all leads through the lack of things to do. Boredom, which many of the people here today have told me, is what leads them into petty crime of one sort or another. But there is obviously a small hardcore of young who seem to have lost all kind of respect for even the most elderly in our community, and that is what I think is so worrying.
Stephen Waldorf, who was gunned down by London detectives by mistake, has accepted £120,000 agreed compensation from the Metropolitan Police. He'll also get £20,000 in legal costs. Mr. Waldorf, who's 27, was mistaken by police hunting for the gunman David Martin. He was shot in January last year as he was travelling in a friend's car. He was hit by 5 bullets and pistol-whipped, but made a remarkable recovery in hospital. Firemen wearing breathing apparatus managed to rescue 4 men trapped by poisonous fumes inside a canal tunnel at Kidsgrove in Staffordshire. The men only survived by lying in the mud and water at the bottom of a drained part of the tunnel where there was most oxygen. The fumes were caused by a fire on a compressor. The British Medical Association has warned doctors that surrogate motherhood, or what it calls rent-a-womb schemes, are unethical. This follows concern over plans to set up a clinic in Surrey where surrogate mothers would have babies for childless couples. The prize money at the Wimbledon Tennis Championships this year will be more than £1 million for the first time. The men's singles champion will win £100,000 compared with £60,000 last year. That's £13,500 more than Bjorn Borg won from 5 singles victories from 1976 to 1980. The ladies' champion will collect £90,000 against £60,000 last year. The men's doubles champions will share £40,000 and the ladies' doubles winners will receive £34,700.
Charlton Athletic Football Club, in serious financial trouble, has a new hope of survival. Greenwich Council has agreed to sponsor them for £250,000 over 5 years. In return, the Labour-controlled authority wants a representative on the board and cheaper admittance for the old and the unemployed. In the High Court tomorrow, a consortium of businessmen will ask for approval for a takeover.
Probably more people actually come and watch Charlton Athletic than almost any other form of entertainment or sport within the borough.
What do you think the ratepayers are going to say about ploughing money into a football club that's been losing so much?
I think the ratepayers would actually condemn us if we let pass an opportunity to save a club like Charlton Athletic.
The Football Association have warned West Ham and Birmingham they'll be excluded from the next 2 FA Cup competitions if their fans are involved in any more crowd trouble in the next 2 seasons. The ultimatum follows a pitch invasion at last month's cup tie in Birmingham. The FA chairman, Bert Millichip, said the association wanted to show determination to rid ourselves of the vermin which has attached itself to us. There was strong police presence in Barcelona tonight, where a contingent of Manchester United fans ignored advice from the club and travelled to Spain for the match.
United arrived back at their hotel from an afternoon training session to find the place more resembling a 5-star Catalonian fortress. During the day, the police had trebled the guard on the building, which is just a 5-minute walk from the impressive Barcelona Football Club complex. Police on horseback and armed arrived in strength at the ground, patrolling the perimeter. It was this fear of trouble between rival fans that provoked United's management not to request an allocation of tickets for the game. They and their supporters club specifically asked their fans to stay away, but some did travel. As the match started, there'd been no reports of any serious disturbances in the ground or in the city. The United fans were segregated by staff and placed beneath floodlights, high up and out of sight of the local crowd, who were in vociferous form. Staff from the British consulate were also watching the game, and they'd also left colleagues in an office in the city to deal with any English fans who may get into trouble. Surprisingly, at half-time, Barcelona, who hadn't been fancied by many local people, were leading 1-0. The goal came from an error in United's defence. Colin Baker, News at 10, Barcelona.
And in the last minute, United went 2 goals behind thanks to a goal by Barcelona's Rojo. In the European Cup, Dundee United are one of 2 British clubs left in the competition. Tonight they played their away leg at Rapid of Vienna and after being ahead for much of the game ended up losing 2-1. Rapid more than lived up to their name in the first half with a series of raids which should have put the Austrian team ahead. Only Hamish McAlpine in goal kept his side in the game. Then after half an hour, Dundee went into the lead from their first real attack, ending with a spectacular shot from fullback Derek Stark. It took another hour for Rapid to equalise, Max Hagmeyer the scorer. He's come on as a substitute only a few minutes earlier. And with just 3 minutes to go, Vienna got the lead they needed to have any chance in the second leg. Kranjkar pushing the ball home with the United defence for once looking less than effective.
And the rest of tonight's results in the other European Cup quarter-final first leg match. Liverpool 1, Benfica 0. That's Russia's 34th goal of the season. European Cup Winners' Cup quarter-finals first leg. Barcelona, I don't have that score. Újpest Doja 2, Aberdeen 0. That's Aberdeen's first defeat in 28 games. UEFA Cup quarter-finals first leg. Nottingham Forest 1, Sturm Graz 0. Tottenham 2, Austria Vienna 0. Archibald and Brazil scored for Tottenham. Cannon League Division 1, Sunderland 1, Queen's Park Rangers 0. QPR's John Gregory was sent off. Division 2, Blackburn Rovers 4, Swansea 1, Sheffield Wednesday 1, Fulham 1. Division 3, Lincoln City 4, Gillingham 0. Division 4, Chester 0, Chesterfield 2, Hereford 5, Hartlepool 0, Peterborough 1, Aldershot 2, Reading 1, Colchester 0.
The Princess of Wales visited a health centre in London today where schoolgirls were being vaccinated against German measles. And she confessed that, like them, she was not very keen on having injections.
As always, differently elegant, the Princess continued the wing collar motif which she started last week, but this time with a floppy bow tie and an almost male-cut herringbone coat with a trim velvet collar. There was no specific reason for this visit, merely her interest in medical centres, and this one at Lisson Grove in London is claimed to be one of the best equipped and staffed anywhere. She had a word of comfort for 3 young girls awaiting inoculations against rubella, the disease more commonly known as German measles, which in expectant mothers can lead to the birth of disabled children. The Princess, of course, is the patron of the National Rubella Campaign. The Princess found the whole visit so interesting that she overstayed her time by some 20 minutes, but that didn't deter the large crowd waiting outside. As always, she insisted on taking time to chat to them and to accept the inevitable small bouquets of flowers. When she left, she'd clearly thoroughly enjoyed herself. Ray Maloney, News at 10, at the Lisson Grove Health Centre in London.
The main story again. A combined bid to take over the state-owned Scott Lithgow shipyard has been made by Trafalgar House and an Anglo-French group.
Finally, a farmer in Wiltshire seems to have discovered a cure for something that until now seemed incurable, a bald pate.
Farmer John Coombs discovered his miracle cure when dust from a bag of cattle food fell onto his bald pate, and Primrose, his favourite Jersey cow, licked it off. Now hair is growing on parts that have been open to the elements for 25 years. But does it really work?
Yes, as far as I'm concerned, definitely. And that's the proof.
What was it like before?
Absolutely bald. The top was absolutely bald. It was a friar tuck hairstyle. No two ways about that. Similar to an egg in an egg cup.
Well, you haven't got that much hair on top even now.
Of course not. After the last hectic 7 or 9 days, they've pulled most of the fresh growth out again because it's grown and their tongues go round it and they're now able to pull it instead of just lick it.
All baldies have been invited to try out the new theory, and 2 men turned up today, but there's just no dignified way of getting a cow to lick your head. What was it like having your head licked?
Like somebody going over with very coarse sandpaper.
So the advice from Farmer Coombs, throw away your oils and lotions and get a house cow. Peter Hayes, News at 10, Wiltshire.
And that score, of course, was Barcelona 2, Manchester United 0. That's all from us tonight. Good night.
Next, the Thames News headlines, followed by tonight's big feature film. Michael Caine stars in The Island.
Joel's parents are taking a trip.
Just use your best judgment. You know we trust you.
He's taking care of the car. And the house.
I don't remember giving permission for a party, Joel.
A party?
He's also taking care of business.
Are you ready for me?
Risky business.
Just take those old records on.
Risky business. The adventures of a model son.
In the West End and all over London from Friday.
Now there's a better way to buy and sell your home, where you see this sign.
This is the tale of two travelers who arrive in New York for a connecting flight. One flew Pan Am, and one didn't. With Pan Am, international and domestic flights are all under one roof. So whilst this passenger makes his way to another terminal, our Pan Am traveller is never more than a few steps away from his departure gate. In fact, anyone who's had trouble making a connection should now know that Pan Am have the only one check-in, one terminal service to over 40 US cities. Pan Am. You can't beat the experience.
The Royal Festival Hall. It's part of what London's all about, isn't it? I remember it going up as part of the Festival of Britain back in 1951. It was a load of fun then, and the Royal Festival Hall is still a load of fun now. And it's open all day. I can never resist a little shopping. And I adore the view. Plenty of time. I think I'll go to the pictures. Exhibitions like this are for everyone. And they're free. I don't consider an evening complete without a good glass of wine. I wonder who's performing tonight. Me.
The GLC Royal Festival Hall. Great music and more.
Good evening. The Thames News headlines. There's been a call tonight for a full inquiry into fraud on London transport. It follows a claim that ticket irregularities on the buses alone could involve more than 80% of staff. In 1983, there were more than 10,500 reported cases. Conservatives at the GLC say the true cost, which has been put at £25 million, has been underestimated. They're demanding an independent assessment. Tonight, the managing director of LT Buses, Mr. David Cornby, said the figure had been misunderstood and that LT had nothing to hide. He also said only a minority of frauds were carried out by staff, and very often the losses were mistakes. People living near a church in Hornsey, which burnt down today, were advised by the borough surveyor to move out tonight because of the danger of a wall collapsing. They refused to go, but agreed to spend the night in the front of their houses away from the danger. 80 firemen fought the blaze, which destroyed St Paul's in Whiteman Road. It started this afternoon as workmen were repairing a hole in the roof. Damage has been estimated at £1 million, but ironically, the church authorities wanted to pull down the building anyway. Police in Surrey have started a full-scale investigation after the decomposed body of a child was found by workmen at Egham. Builders using a mechanical digger discovered the bones in the garden of a demolished house in Mullins Road. It's not yet known how long ago the child died or whether or not it had met a violent death. A group of council tenants from Fulham went to Parliament today to ask MPs to help them keep their homes. Hammersmith and Fulham Council plan to sell the 300 flats at Fulham Court to a private developer. The council say they'll offer the tenants new homes, but most want to stay put. The residents are calling on the government for £9 million to bring their homes up to standard. Medical researchers at the Middlesex Hospital in London have made a breakthrough that offers some infertile women new hope of a baby. The team have built a tiny pump that automatically injects hormones 16 times a day. The results are monitored 3 times a week on ultrasound scanners, which cuts down the risk of possibly dangerous multiple conceptions. Already more than 50 women who tried it for a month have become pregnant. Thames weather. Overnight, dry with a slight ground frost in 1 or 2 places. Tomorrow, bright with most places dry, but there is the chance of a shower or two, of course. The high 8 centigrade, that's 46 Fahrenheit. Well, that's it from us, and tonight, our film, Michael Caine in The Island.